12 months ago, there are people saying that if you have something AI generated and do some modification, you would rather redo it from scratch. But as of today, no. With Meshy 5, we are finally solving the hard surface models.
Welcome to a new episode of XR AI Spotlight, the show that gives a stage to the founders and makers pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. My name is Gabriele Romagnoli, I'm your host, and I'm here today with Ethan Hu. Ethan holds a PhD in computer graphics and AI from MIT, and he is the CEO of Meshy, a Silicon Valley-based startup creating an AI-powered tool that generates texture 3D models from images or text in under a minute. Meshy is the only 3DI tool featured in A16Z's 2024 AI Tool Survey, and only in 2024 over 20 million 3D assets were generated with AI thanks to Meshy. In this conversation, we will dive into the world of 3D Gen AI. We will discover how are professionals really using 3D assets generated with AI.
I have to say, there are already a lot of workflow in game production, in film production, in AR, VR, XR that can leverage AI-generated 3D assets. A lot of people just use Meshy to generate a rough mesh and then import those meshes into ZBrush. There are also people using Meshy to very quickly do a prototype of a 3D model. There are also cases where level artists use Meshy to generate those 3D models and just smartly arrange those models in a scene.
How is the industry reacting to these rapid advancements?
When we were releasing Meshy 1, a lot of people are saying that, oh, look, what kind of garbage AI is generating? That was almost 12 months ago. We're already seeing many AA studios using Meshy-generated assets in their final game. Some of the AAA game studios saying that, okay, I think the mesh nowadays is pretty good, beyond my expectation. And if you continue improving the mesh on hard surface, it'll be just usable. I can just directly use it and my next game.
Look more broadly at the 3D content for various use cases, from visualization to full games generated with AI.
In the coming 5 years, meshes will still be the mainframe representation of 3D models. Gaussian splatting is an appearance-based method, but there's one drawback of Gaussian splatting.
And at the end, Ethan will share an ambitious prediction on the future of 3D Gen AI.
The technology is developing super fast, and our goal is to get production-ready quality. With Meshy 5, I think we are 70-80% there. Ultimately, I think we'll get something just as high quality as Flux is nowadays doing for 2D. I think that point will happen within...
And now it's time to roll the title and welcome Ethan under the spotlight. Ethan, so what are, at this very moment, the most common misconception about 3D generative AI, and how do you face them?
That's a great question. And every time we release anything on YouTube, on like Instagram, there are always people commenting that look at the UV and topology of those AI generated models. It's just so messy. So 3D AI is useless because of this. So I have to say this has to be the biggest misunderstanding, because a lot of people don't use AI generated models as is. They do a little bit of modification in ZBrush, or they use AI generated models from Meshy for conceptualization of what they have in mind. So, and also Meshy has shipped a quadrant mesher that converts the mesh from like 1 million faces to, let's say, 5,000 quad faces, so that you can further use it for animation or subdivision or any further touch up with your human intelligence. So currently, I have to say, there are already a lot of workflow in game production, in film production, in AR, VR, XR that can leverage AI-generated 3D assets. It's not the case that AI generates messy models with just in the sense of the wireframe, the edge flow. That doesn't mean AI generated 3D assets can never get there. It will get there eventually. But even as of today, it's already useful in a lot of
Gen AI will revolutionize 3D modeling. That 3D artists will be out of job in a couple of months. Now we have to be honest here, right? So there are still some limitations. What are the current limitation of 3D asset generated with AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, I really want to provide a candid perspective about this. So currently, it's not the case that all the 3D modelers um, will be somehow put out of job because of AI generated 3D assets. I would view it this way because when we have Photoshop, does it mean a lot of painters are just put out of business? No, right? Because we're just providing Photoshop is just providing you a better tool to do painting using a digital media compared to like the traditional way of painting with doing a oil paint. So for I think it's the same for AI-based tools. um, it's still we still need a lot of human creativity to describe what you want. And as of today, you may also have to touch up what is being generated with AI. Believe me, there are people saying that AI generated 3D model is not even worth um, doing modification. That is not the case anymore. Like 12 months ago, there are people saying that if you have something AI generated and do some modification, you would rather redo it from scratch. But as of today, no. You can already import what AI has generated into, let's say, ZBrush, Maya, Blender, those tools, and do your modification. And actually, the modification can be small and can be big. You can start from AI is providing you. So I would say Meshy, as well as many other AI tools, they're just tools. They are not there to replace people's creativity. And with those tools, it can significantly improve your productivity so that you can better focus your efforts on thinking about, hey, what's going to be a good design of this like helmet in my um, like battlefield game, things like that. You don't have to waste any more time like just doing very basic sculpting and touching up all the you'll be able to see the result very quickly with Meshy within 2 minutes. But you still have to think about it for a while regarding the creativity, the design, any other aspects that will require human labor and creativity.
So you brought up two core aspects that I want to dig a bit more in. One is
Hmm.
the kind of workflow that are being used, and the other is the use cases of these
Hmm.
models, right? So can you give us maybe some example of how 3D artists are using these 3D generated assets in their own workflow?
Yeah, good question. So I wouldn't say AI is taking care of all the workflows. At this moment, there are some workflows where AI can already be practically usable. So one example is that a lot of people just they use Meshy to generate a rough mesh, and then import those meshes into ZBrush, and then it will be very easy to add a lot more details in ZBrush, much easier compared to doing everything from scratch. There are also people using Meshy to very quickly do a prototype of a 3D model. Just use text 3D or images 3D, and this feature is actually sometimes even used by concept artists who are doing 2D because they really want to have a 3D view of their concept design, right? And then they pass along the 3D model as well as their 2D concept together as a batch to the downstream 3D artists so that the 3D artists can have a reference of the 3D model. Not just the 3D artists are no longer just modeling the 3D model based on a 2D painting. Now they have both a 2D painting and a AI generated 3D model that is produced by the concept artist. So there are also cases where level artists they use Meshy to generate those 3D models and just smartly arrange those models in a scene. And this will significantly accelerate their level design process. In the past, they'll have to find models from Sketchfab, Unity Store. It's actually very hard to find what you want because um, even describing a 3D model using text is hard. So searching is hard. Not to say may not be the model you want, right? With Meshy, your creativity is just unleashed. You can create whatever you want within a minute, and because those level design assets do not have to be super polished, it can be a prototype and be replaced later, right? So that's where AI is already playing a significant role.
So you brought up another thing, and I'm just also a personal curiosity, just based on meshy, let's say, analytics. Are people using more text to 3D or image to 3D?
Good question. So currently it's half half. And
Mm.
very interestingly, the users of text 3D and images 3D are very different. So a good news is that we're already seeing many double A studios using meshy generated assets in their final game. And the way they do that is through images 3D. Because if you're a game studio, then there is some requirement on the asset art style and the asset um, it just to have to reflect what is being done in the concept art. So apparently, if you already have the concept design, then using Image 3D will give you more control over text 3D. But simultaneously, we have been observing that a lot of people who are doing VR, XR, 3D printing, um, especially those are who people who are not artists, they're creating something for fun for 3D printers. They just use Text 3D because with Text 3D, it's way easier. You don't have to come up with an image, and it's just more creativity unleashed.
So there is another things that is, let's say, I wouldn't say a criticism, but something that everybody is always craving for, and that is control during this generative process, right? And of
Mhm.
course, adding image is you get a much higher degree of control over the final model. Um, you guys, what you have also done, and that was one of the things that blew my mind, was the texture in painting. So this ability to just rotate a part of the model, select an area of it, and then
Mhm.
retexture it based on the prompt that you add. So this is an example of adding significant amount of control in the hand of the user after the model has been generated. Are there other ways in which you see this process becoming more streamlined?
Yeah. So we were talking about control, right? Previously, we shipped like regional editing of texture, and I think very soon we'll have regional editing of the mesh. You can freely generate a mesh and just select, let's say, um, the hand part or the head part, and say, okay, I want a smiley face, I want bigger eyes, I want like a um, let's say a orc head instead of a human head, you can freely combine that with combine modification with what you have already using Text 3D or Image 3D. So we really want to provide this kind of regional modifications to our users so that they can. It's not just doing random draw from a generative model. Now you can just generate something, modify it, and make sure it is what you want.
There is also another point. I feel that
Mhm.
every time that we end up discussing about 3D generative model, somehow we always talk about, or people always tend to refer to characters. Is there a
Yeah.
reason? Like, I mean, are people really making mostly characters instead of props, assets, houses, or something that populates an environment?
So that depends on your use case, right? If you're doing 3D printing, then actually with very high probability you're creating characters. Who doesn't want a standing handsome 3D model getting 3D printed, right? But if you're doing game development, the contradiction here is that AI can generate good characters, but the good characters are usually hero assets in a video game. So that's why we're mostly
Mhm.
seeing that for indie game developers, they may generate some models, character models using Meshy, so that they can just put it in their indie game. But for AA and AAA studios where they have higher requirement on the mesh quality, they usually don't use AI to generate the characters. They use AI to generate the assets because the props,
Mm.
like a chair, a table, um, a rock. It's just they'll just be there. You need a lot of them, but it doesn't mean every of them have to be of super high quality. That's why for different use cases, people have different preference regarding the selection of character and props.
Makes total sense now that I think about it. So absolutely. And so you guys have also been doing this for the past, I believe, 1.5 year, something like this. So
Yeah,
I was
something like that.
curious, like, what have you learned throughout this journey?
Yeah, I have to say we learned a lot. When we were releasing Meshy 1, a lot of people are saying that, oh, look, what kind of garbage AI is generating? I wouldn't use something like this. So that was almost 12 months ago, and we have released Meshy 2, Meshy 3, Meshy 4, and now Meshy 5. Basically, every 3 months, we have a major version coming out. So what I learned is to really stay optimistic about technology and be humble and listening to what the customers are saying. So with Meshy 2, which is 3 months after Meshy 1 was released, there are already people saying that Meshy 2 has really good textures. Compared to Meshy 1, the texture quality is significantly improved. So people don't no longer say it's garbage. Now people say that okay, so now you have pretty good texture, but if you remove the texture, only look at the mesh quality is terrible. So we're not going to use AI models. And Meshy 3 slightly improved the mesh quality, and with Meshy 4, we significantly improved the mesh quality. And the feedback we're getting from Meshy 4 is actually very different from that we get from Meshy 2. So with Meshy 4, we have both high quality texture and high quality mesh. And there are already people saying that, okay, I think the mesh here is definitely not as good as what a human would create, but it's getting there. I can use the mesh in. I even have that feedback from some of the AAA game studios saying that, okay, I think the mesh nowadays is pretty good beyond my expectation. And if you continue improving the mesh on hard surface, it'll be just usable. I can just directly use it in my next game. Doesn't have to be prototyped. It may be something that we can use when we finally ship the game. So we are definitely making a significant amount of progress over the past 12 months, actually past um, 15 months since Meshy 2. And with Meshy 5 now, I do believe that it will get the 3D assets almost production ready for many use cases. It doesn't have to be for all the cases. I'm not viewing the usability of AI generated 3D assets as a binary thing. It's not 0 or 1, right? I think we're at 0.7 now, or even 0.8 with Meshy 5 um, being available. So
So
yeah,
maybe
a lot of
maybe
learnings.
you introduce Meshy 5, right? So maybe why don't you tell us what are some of the improvements that you have made in
Mhm.
Meshy 5?
Yeah. So I just mentioned that hard surface is one thing we're trying to solve with Meshy 5, and we're so happy that um, it's finally there. With Meshy 4, a lot of people saying that okay, it's good with organic characters, animals, but when we're trying to generate a cup, a helmet, a shield, a sword, you always observe the edges to be blurry. It doesn't look like anything that is manufactured by mankind. So with Meshy 5, we're finally solving the hard surface models. So that's one thing. And in general, with Meshy 5, because of much higher quality of training and data, now we're shipping something, um, the much better alignment between the generated 3D model and the input image. That's one step towards allowing our users to actually get what they want with higher success rate. Previously with Meshy 4, sometimes you have to try many times. You have to try, like, let's say 20 times to get something what you want. But with Meshy 5, I would say maybe just a single draw, you'll find something that aligns pretty well with what you want in the image. That's much better image 3D model alignment. And also the texture. For the texture in previous versions, sometimes you'll find that the texture is high resolution, but it just doesn't align with the underlying mesh. One example could be we have generated a face mesh, and the eye position is not going to be aligned with the eye position in the texture is not going to be aligned with the eye position in the on the mesh. So it can sometimes create you very weird 3D models, which looks okay if it's just a front view, but even if you just rotate by 30 degrees, you'll find some very weird, sometimes even horrible things. With Meshy 5, we're happy that we're finally solving that alignment issue as well. Um, so I think those are the three major upgrades, which is much better hard surface, significantly improved alignment between the mesh and the input image, and much higher texture quality.
You mentioned one thing regarding also studio, AA studios start
Mhm.
using 3D generated models with Meshy.
Yeah.
One question I have is many studios are also always a bit scared or afraid about
Mhm.
using these models for, let's say, copyrights.
Mhm.
So, is how does that apply to the model generated with Meshy?
So currently, as long as the input doesn't contain anything that violates copyright, the output should be good. So the thing is, as long as your prompt doesn't contain a Mickey Mouse, we're not going to generate you a Mickey Mouse, right? And if you're using image 3D, the problem is alleviated because we're just doing translation. We're translating your 2D design into a 3D model. We're not generating something from scratch. So for studios, they always use Images 3D, and Images 3D is much more copyright safety compared to Text 3D, because in Text 3D there is just too much imagination from AI, and maybe you lose out of control and you get something related to copyright. But for Images 3D, I think we're good.
But isn't that also dependent on the kind of data that we use for the training? I mean,
Mhm.
this copyright issue, is it about how likely that model looks to something that is copyrighted, or it's from the data and the background that we use to generate uh, this model from, let's say, Meshy's backend?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I have to say we are using publicly available data and some proprietary data for training. So I don't think there is any copyright issue within the data. And um, however, um, if your input contain, let's say, a Mario, if it's a Mario image, then we're going to give you a Mario 3D model, right? So we just have to make sure the input doesn't contain any kind of copyright infringement.
I just wanted to have a quick break to remind you that if you're enjoying this conversation, you should definitely check out the XR AI Spotlight newsletter. By subscribing, you will get weekly interviews like this one directly in your inbox, an app or product I personally have tested and recommend, and access to a list of over 400 mixed reality apps for Quest that you can easily search and filter. Just check the first link in the show description. And now, let's get back to the show. Okay. So it is a lot about the input that's being used, and then of course Mesh is gonna replicate that, let's say, and so consequently potentially create a copyrighted model, but because also the input was copyrighted in the first place.
Yeah. So let's say, for example, let's say we don't have any Mario in the training data set. It doesn't mean your generative model cannot generate a Mario. If you just feed it a Mario painting, then it might still try to reconstruct a 3D version of a Mario. But uh, right,
Of course,
so I
and
think the input is important.
yeah, no, it should generate a 3D Mario because I inputted an image, a 2D image of the
Yeah.
3D asset, right, of what I want. So
Mhm.
I do have another question is that since we spoke, there have been many more tools. right, coming up that are addressing this 3D Gen AI space. So, what would you say are the differences right now between these tools, and how can you help people pick the one that best suits their need?
Yeah, great question. So regarding differentiation of Meshy compared to other products doing 3D generative AI, I have to say Meshy really focuses on workflow. And we are generating very good organic 3D models, especially for characters, for um, for animals, for a lot of categories that are that have organic shape. And with Meshy 5, we're doing even better regarding the let's say the hard surface ones, like a helmet, a tank, an airplane, things like that. And we really care about we really care about the aesthetic aspects of the 3D models. So we're not trying to pixel-wise reproduce what you have in the input image. We're trying to add a little bit of creativity in the generation process so that you can have a 3D model that is that looks good instead of looks identical to your input,
And
because we
that's a good
believe that's
point.
what our people want.
There is a degree of reinterpretation sometimes of the
Yeah.
image that's been submitted. For example, I've seen that the poses slightly changes to
Hmm.
make it, for example, better separated, not like in the image
Yeah.
I've submitted. And there are
A pose and T
other
pose.
nuances. Mhm,
Hmm.
correct. And
Yeah.
you mentioned,
So
no,
I
please
have to
go ahead.
say sometimes, yeah, sorry. Sometimes the input image may not be something people want to reproduce identically. They don't want because there is just sometimes there are issues within the concept art because it's 2D, right? There may be some issue about perspectives. Some people use a orthogonal camera to paint a 2D, but in 3D you really want something that is more physically plausible. And I think one thing with Meshy is that even with previous versions of Meshy, we're doing very well regarding the aesthetic aspects of the 3D model, especially in the mesh. And we really care about workflow. If you check out Meshy, you have a giant workspace allowing to separate each step of the generation, and you can do parallel generation. You can freely create with multiple attempts. The task will run in parallel. You don't have to wait for one task to finish before you start another one. So another differentiation is that um, we really care about the needs of professional users, people who want higher control, people who want style control, so many things. So that's 3 points. The first one is a better foundation model that just give you better results, especially regarding aesthetic aspects. The second thing is we offer a more controllable workflow. And the third thing is that we do care about professional creators, especially game studios here um, in the US. And that's the three main differentiations between Meshy and other 3D generative AI products producing meshes. And there are also other products such as World Labs is delivering a product generating 3D Gaussian splattings. I think that's interesting too. I think that's a lot of excitement there. Gaussian splats for environments are really nice, right? So, the currently we're focused on generating single assets so that users can compose those assets into a scene. And there are also other products, let's say generating a skybox, generating 3D Gaussians for the surrounding environment. And Meshy can really be used in complement to those other tools. Yeah, the entire 3D generation space is actually um, very exciting. There is so many things to be generated. We're happy that Mesh is leading the competition, leading the game here regarding the asset generation.
I want to go a bit more into the other space about what other tools you
Mhm.
mentioned, Word Labs, and the big vision now is to create fully playable games just from a prompt,
Yeah.
right? I'm not even sure that we want to ever go there, But before discussing about it, I do have
Mhm.
one more questions regarding workflow, because another thing that you implemented is also the ability to rig and skin and also add a degree of animations. So you have some presets that can be added to the 3D model, and I believe you also can do that for quadrupedal, right? For example, a cat, a
Mhm.
dog, right?
Yeah.
So not just humanoids. How have you seen users using it? Is that something specific that they tends to do with the animation? Like, how have been the user receptive to this new feature?
Yeah, so regarding animation, I have to say it plays multiple rules. The first rule is playing is that it offers the user a capability to just preview how the model will look like when they're animated within Meshy. So
Mm,
previously, people may export the model to tools like Mixamo and then do the animation there. But that's just a lot of exporting, importing, and that's not a super convenient, super streamlined workflow. So within Meshy, if you're generating a T-pose or A-pose or T-pose character, you can just spend a minute to rig it and animate it so that you can have a feeling of what the model look like when it's dynamic, not just
mhm.
static, right? That's the first use case of having those models animated within Meshy. There are also other use cases where people just directly export those animations into Unity and Unreal Engine, where there they can just um, by adding animations to the models, the entire scene becomes more vivid. It's easy for them to um, just it's much easier to create a vivid scene with animated characters instead of static ones. And there are also people animating those characters just for fun. And for another use case is that they generated a post character, they animate it, and instead of capture the entire animation, they just capture a static pose, but it's a good pose. They just want a pose, and they are adding the animation. I think that's one of the feature we may be developing, which is pose editing, not just doing the animation, but there are people just want a static pose for 3D printing, and there are also people doing a screenshot of the static pose and then feed that to tools like Flux or Stable Diffusion for a control net in painting or things like that, so that they can uh, combine 3D and 2D generation.
Very interesting, actually, and it's incredible to see how creative people are, right? I mean, it's not always necessarily about getting that walking or idle pose, but it's also like, okay, I want the idle because then the shoulder is slightly bent, and maybe I have that kind of like more
Yeah,
aesthetic,
you
right?
want a more natural pose, not a T pose or A pose, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. Makes a lot of sense. And you started talking about Gaussian splatting, right? That's something you
Mhm,
introduced. And I was curious because, again, it's another technique that generate a 3D model, a 3D representation,
mhm,
let's call it like this, right? But do you see that as something that is competing, complementary? Are also the approaches for generating these 3D models
mhm,
like different at the base? And then I'll let you answer these questions because, for example, I just learned recently that a model like Trellis, for example, allows
mhm,
to create both 3D models and the splats from it. So, can
mhm.
you unpack this for us?
So I have to say, Gaussian splatting is a really powerful technique that allows you to efficiently um, render a 3D model in a differentiable manner that is suitable for optimization. So in the Travis paper, you're seeing that the model is trained using Gaussian splatting. But for extracting the mesh, you have to use other techniques. You have to use techniques other than Gaussian splatting. I have to say the real power of Gaussian splatting is it's a super efficient way to render 3D objects um, on current computer graphics hardware because you can change the hardware, right? They have already been optimized for years. It's unlikely that you can change the rasterization based hardware. Uh, where Gaussian splatting really plays a significant strength. It's really fast. But there's one drawback of Gaussian splatting, which is when you're trying to extract a mesh from Gaussian splatting, it's really tough because Gaussian splatting is a appearance-based method, which means it's really good at reconstructing the appearance of something. But when you're trying to extract the mesh out of Gaussian splatting, that's going to be a huge headache. There are attempts in the academia to extract meshes out of Gaussian splatting, and but I don't think that's the optimal way yet. But I believe if we continue to push this direction, ultimately, Gaussian splatting will be as powerful as other methods for 3D surface reconstruction. But as of today, I don't think it's the most suitable tool for reconstructing a mesh.
So based on, thank you very much for explaining this because I think it put things in perspective, right? So thank you
Mhm.
for the explanation. And would you then say that these two methods are somehow exclusive? So there should be tools that focus only on one and tools that focus
Mhm.
only on two, or use cases that are only for one or only for two, or you see these two things kind of like merging together at some point?
Yeah, very, very good question. I think they are merging. So um, I think there are two questions here. Um, we have to separately answer. I have to separately answer the two questions. The first one is the application of Gaussian splatting um, and the application of meshes. That's question one, right? So can Gaussian splatting be used together with meshes? Are they replacing each other? Let's say, can you just import a character made of Gaussian splats in your game engine? I think that's question one. And question two is very different. Question two is in generative AI, can Gaussian splatting play an important role compared to currently, let's say, the meshes, the other type of representation we're using? I think those are two very different questions. And for the first two questions regarding their applications in game engine, I think currently, if you're thinking about characters, if you think about, I would say in the coming 5 years, meshes will still be the mainframe representation of 3D models. The reason is meshes are so deeply integrated into the game production workflow. You have to, when you're doing animation, you rig a mesh. When you do surfacing, you UV unwrap a mesh. When you're doing modeling, you modify the mesh in ZBrush, right? When you're doing 3D scanning, and actually the entire graphics pipeline is optimized around meshes. It's not easy to directly replace meshes with Gaussian splats. But there are some cases where you can definitely import a Gaussian splat into a game engine to represent the entire environment. Use it as a advanced form of matte painting. That's certainly doable. But if you want that to react to lighting, react to LOD, things like that, I don't think the technology is mature yet. So the first question answered, which is they will coexist, but I would say in the future 5 or 10 years, still meshes is going to be the mainstream representation of 3D things. And regarding in generative AI, in the learning, in the training process of generative models, I would say Gaussian splatting already plays a super significant role, even more significant compared to meshes, because they are differentiable, they're fast, and they're just um, more compatible with neural networks. Um, and that is why people have a lot of Gaussian splats in. Um, if you look at the generative 3D generative AI papers, they use a lot of Gaussian splats. And interestingly, meshes are kind of the second rule. They are not as competitive as Gaussian splats in many optimization-based methods.
And maybe also because sometimes things are less hot, let's say, so they get maybe less attention compared to something that is instead can be pushed on the front line on any headers and titles.
Yeah, but
That's
there are
also
practical reasons why that happens, right?
so. You have also brought up this concept about using, for example, Gaussian splats for complete environment, right? And Word Labs
Mhm.
that has this big vision, right? And I think a
Hmm.
vision that extends beyond the ability to generate an environment, right? It is about
Hmm.
generating this world. We have seen also
Entire game.
Google saying, correct, right? We have
Yeah.
seen some demos of Google saying, okay, you can give me a prompt and we can create a fully playable interactive game. For example,
Hmm.
there is a car driving at the horizon, or maybe a Minecraft character jumping and
Yeah.
destructing blocks, right?
Hmm.
So how where are we headed in that sense, like, and what can we expect in the upcoming 1 to 3 years, so a realistic horizon?
Yeah, I would say that's a really exciting direction where you can directly prototype a game using, let's say, a text prompt or a input image. So, um, I feel like the question should be answered in quite a few different aspects, like, um, let's say, what, how, when, and why. I feel like the why question is the hardest to answer, which is actually very related to the who question. Who uses that? If that game player is going to use those 3D generated AI model, AI worlds, that would be super exciting, right? If you can directly generate a Mario game or a a racing game or any platformer game using a text prompt or an image, that would be super exciting. And the question is, are the players going to play those games? Is that just a hype, or are those games actually playable? So if the answer to the who question is we're developing this technology for consumers, then we have to make sure AI is actually creating something that's interesting, because the entire gaming industry is already super developed, and there are, let's say, a million video games available on Earth, and you're directly competing with those a million video games with a AI generated one. Is that going to be more interesting? We have to see. There is such possibility, and there's another two answers for the who question. The second answer is game developers, game producers are going to use those tools to quickly prototype a game. And that is more practical. But the market is smaller because there are not that many game producers um, on our planet Earth, right? They are a very small fraction of the population. They may use those tools to prototype a game, especially, let's say, imagine that we just type. We are creating a platformer game with the main character being, let's say, a rabbit, or let's say something like a, ca- um, a giraffe, things like that, and you immediately get a game like that. That's super exciting, but we
But
don't
you
have to
made a
worry
good
about the
point.
quality of that game.
Exactly. I mean, you made a very good point. It's like the fact that something is possible or something that can be done doesn't mean that should be done.
Yeah,
Because again,
exactly. You have to consider the market.
why are we doing this?
So,
Are people gonna play it? And and sometimes, I think that very often we try to push technology for the sake of pushing technology without thinking about the use case enough, and there should be space for that. There should be space for innovation reckless, because out of that sometimes also
yeah.
brilliant things come out. But on the other hand, it is I wonder if the power it's is gonna rely more on the fact that more people can start creating simple gamified experience
Hmm.
than the fact that the people that are already creating them can make more or can make different one. It's more like someone wakes up, I want to make a small gamified experience that does this,
Hmm.
make it for me. And that, I wonder if it's maybe an interesting open opportunity, instead of thinking of, okay, I am a studio now, I can make 1 million games a day, let's push them
Hmm.
all out and see what works.
Yeah. That's a very exciting feature about this technology, right? It significantly lower the barrier and cost of actually creating some kind of interactive experience. It doesn't have to be a game, right? We don't have to use the word game here. It could be just something playable or something interactive. So I think there's a lot of space of imagination here, and technology-wise, there's something we have to solve, which is if you can, many of those technologies are based on video diffusion models. If you have played with the OSS demo, play with if you have checked out Genie 2 by Google, so they're video diffusion models, and making them real time will take a while. I wouldn't say it's happening today, but given a 1 to 3 year time horizon, that may be possible. That may be possible. You may be able to just create a interactive game or any experience running on a single GPU that could only run diffusion models. That's one possibility. Um, if that works, that would be huge. That would be something transforming the entire entertainment industry, right? Um, I
And I
think
think
I
that,
think that's a very interesting thing.
and I'm so we are here closing up, and I do have one questions because you
Mhm,
just pushed Meshy 5. So at some point it's gonna come Meshy 6, Meshy 7. But
mhm.
maybe the more bigger question is, what can we expect from Meshy in the next year or two?
So I would say the technology is developing super fast, and our goal is to get production ready quality. With Meshy 5, I think we are 70-80% there. And we still need to provide more control, higher quality of meshes, more style control, and ultimately, I think we'll get something just as high quality as Flux is nowadays doing for 2D. And I think that point will happen within 12 months, given how quickly the technology is evolving. And another thing that's super interesting is about um, generating, let's say, think about generating meshes that are suitable for mobile games. Um, I talked to a mobile game producer and asking like, how many faces are there in your mobile games? And he told me that okay, for a house I just put in my mobile game, it has 9 faces. Can you imagine that? 9 faces for a house. Like typically a 3D model is like a we have, let's say, 20K or sometimes even up to 1 million faces. But those low poly, I wouldn't even use the word low poly. It's just to optimize for mobile hardware. There are so many use cases we can dive into and significantly improve the quality and user experience regarding generating something that's actually useful for professional use cases that can actually free the artists from doing a lot of labor intense work and allows them to freely imagine what's possible with 3D. Um, I would say that's the vision for Meshy, which is deliver something that can completely free the artist from doing all the laborious work in 3D production.
Ethan, thank you very much. So I think I'm gonna hold you that promise: flux quality 3D models in 12 months, right?
Let's chat again in 12 months.
Thank you very much for listening in. If you like the show, remember to leave a rating on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or a thumbs up on YouTube. It really helps me keep doing this and shine the spotlights on the greatest founders and makers pushing the boundaries of XR and AI. Also, make sure to check out the show page xraispotlight.com, where you can find more conversation like this one. Till next time.